Millionaire, shocked to see black woman jump in the rain to save a little girl. The rain poured down like a waterfall, soaking the busy streets of the city. Cars splashed through puddles, their tires skidding across the slick asphalt. People hurried by, umbrellas held high, faces twisted in annoyance at the dreary weather. But on the corner of 5th and Maple, something remarkable was about to happen. Sarah Thompson, a dedicated supermarket cashier, stood there, the vibrant colors of her raincoat contrasting with the gray surroundings. She was known for her warm smile and kindness, always offering a cheerful greeting to the customers at her register. But today, her heart raced, sensing an impending danger that few around her could see. Across the street, oblivious to the chaos, a little girl danced dangerously close to the edge. Her laughter rang out, sweet and innocent, yet it echoed ominously in the air. Sarah's heart lurched as her eyes widened in horror. Time felt heavy. She leapt into the rain, the cold splashing against her skin, blurring her vision but sharpening her focus. With a courage that seemed to ignite the very air around her, she lunged forward. The world around her dissolved into a cacophony of shouts and honking horns. It was just her and the child, a fierce desire to protect, propelling her faster through the chaos. She grabbed the girl just as the car whizzed by, pulling her back from the edge of catastrophe. Adrenaline surged, but a wave of relief crashed over her as she cradled the child, heart pounding in tandem. Meanwhile, Robert Montgomery, a stern yet wealthy businessman, watched from the sidewalk, his mouth agape. His daughter Alice had been the one in danger, and he felt everything freeze around him. His mind raced. Who was this woman? Why was she jumping into danger for his child? He felt gratitude wrestle with shock, and as the scene unfolded, a strange admiration bloomed within him. At the hospital, as Alice received, and yet there was a spark, a connection forged in the fire of unexpected circumstances. Robert's mother, Beatrice, would never approve. Neither would Claire, his shrewd lawyer who always had a plan. They envisioned a polished life for him, a well-to-do partner, refined and perfect. But here was Sarah, real and raw, shifting the axis of his carefully structured world. Over the next few weeks, Sarah grappled with insecurities. She'd never felt like she belonged in his world, wondering if his family would ever accept her. The weight of their judgment pressed heavy on her heart. Maybe moving to a small town was the solution. Could she leave behind the warmth of newfound love? But Robert wasn't ready to let go. Torn between his love for Sarah and the expectations tethering him, he refused to back down. With Alice at his side, he embarked on a quest to find Sarah, a plan beginning to take shape in his mind. But there would be challenges. Beatrice's disapproval loomed like a dark cloud. Just as doubt began to nibble at their bond, Robert knelt in the park under a gathering storm, Alice's excitement bubbling like the bubbles of hope in their hearts. As the sky darkened, he took a deep breath. "Will you marry me, Sarah?" Would she? Or would the storm of their realities scatter their dreams before they even had a chance to take flight? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without prior notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Robert knelt under the darkening sky, Alice bouncing next to him, excitement bursting from her small frame. "Will you marry me, Sarah?" The words hung in the thick air. Time seemed to stretch as Sarah's wide eyes searched his face. A million thoughts raced through her mind. Love, yes. Hope, yes. But fear. What would his family say? Would he truly choose her over everything he'd ever known? Just as she opened her mouth to respond, a loud crash erupted from a nearby building. The sound echoed like thunder, snapping them back to reality. People on the street shrieked and scattered, like leaves caught in a whirlwind. A cloud of dust and debris shot into the air, blotting out the fading daylight. "Sarah," Robert shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Alice. The world spun as confusion engulfed them. Sarah stumbled back, her heart racing. What was happening? Then, from the chaos, a tall figure emerged, silhouetted against the smoky backdrop. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, staggered into view. In one hand, he clutched a duffel bag tightly, as though it contained his very soul. The other hand gripped something shiny, glinting ominously in the dimness. "Get back! Everyone! Stay away!" he screamed, panic distorting his features. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the crowd. People began to retreat, eyes wide, hearts pounding. "Call the police!" a woman shouted, her voice trembling. Robert tightened his grip around Alice, shielding her from the imminent danger. Sarah's heart dropped, fear clawing at her chest. The man looked lost, cornered. There was desperation in his gaze, but also something darker, a wild intensity that set her on edge. "Please, just let me go. I can't go back," he cried, glancing around frantically. Sarah felt a strange pull towards him. What had pushed him to this brink? But her instincts screamed for safety. She took a cautious step back, eyes darting for an escape route. "Stay calm," Robert shouted, his voice steady but loud enough to cut through the panic. "We're here to help." But before they could understand the situation more, the man raised the object in his hand, a gun. It felt like the entire world stopped. Gasps echoed, and then a scream cut through the air. "Run!" someone yelled, and chaos erupted. In that split second, time folded and unfolded again. Sarah's heart hammered. She dove behind a nearby car, adrenaline flooding her veins. She looked back over her shoulder, trying to catch a glimpse of Robert and Alice. There was fear in Robert's gaze, determination too. And just as a feeling of dread washed over her, she saw the man start to move towards them. "Stay away from them," Robert yelled with protective urgency. Suddenly, the gun went off, a deafening crack that sent shards of terror through the crowd. The world blurred. Everything shifted into impossible chaos. Smoke filled the air, a bitter taste choking Sarah. Was anyone hurt? As silence fell momentarily, Sarah's heart sank. She saw Robert, kneeling, Alice hiding behind him, his eyes locked on the man. Then, with an unexpected twist, the man dropped the gun. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he shouted, collapsing to the ground. And then, a flurry of uniforms and commotion shattered the frozen moment. Sarah's breath quickened as police swarmed in like a tidal wave, closing the space. Their shouts mixed with the distant wail of sirens. But then, just as the chaos seemed to settle, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. A woman, sharp and confident, strode towards them, her eyes narrowing with recognition. It was Claire, Robert's lawyer, the very definition of sophistication, but now there was something unsettling beneath her polished surface. "What are you doing here?" Robert called out, confusion mingling with shock. Before she could answer, the man on the ground muttered, "They know. They'll find out." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and the initial shock began to peel back, revealing layers of hidden truths. Had Sarah just stepped into a web far more tangled than she'd ever imagined? Would love be enough when the storm unveiled its darkest secrets? Time ticked on, but for Sarah, it wouldn't stop. And before she could truly grasp the full impact of the moment, a chilling doubt clamored at her mind. What had she really gotten herself into? The weight of the man's words hung in the air, a strange tension weaving around the crowd. Sarah felt a chill creep down her spine. The police moved in, authoritative and loud, taking control of the chaos that had erupted. Shouts echoed, and commands bounced off the walls of the buildings like the crack of thunder. "Get back! Everyone back!" They pushed people away, but Sarah felt glued to the spot, her gaze locked on Robert and Alice. "Is everyone okay?" she shouted, scanning their faces. Relief flooded her when she saw them both unharmed, though Robert's face was tight, eyes alert. But the man on the ground, now surrounded, was still muttering, "You don't understand. They'll come for me." His wide eyes darted around, filled with a mix of desperation and fear. Suddenly, the crowd's murmurs shifted, stirring like a whispering wind. "Who is he? What does he want?" Their curiosity ignited a growing clamor. The scene thickened with uncertainty, and Sarah could feel her pulse quicken further. Then, before anyone could react, Claire stepped closer, her voice cutting clean through the chaos. "Stop this! He's not who you think!" Robert's head snapped towards her, incredulity etched across his face. "What do you know, Claire?" "Enough to know this is a setup." Claire's eyes glinted, a mixture of anger and fear. The crowd sucked in a collective breath, confusion rippling through them all. At that moment, the man on the ground gasped, a flicker of recognition igniting in his eyes as he locked onto Claire. You sold me out." The accusations hung heavily in the air. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd. Sarah's heart raced, confusion blending with horror. What was going on? "What do you mean?" Claire shot back, her composure cracking. "You think I wanted this?" "Enough!" the police shouted, moving in closer. The tension hit a breaking point, and the man started to rise slowly to his feet, despite everyone's warnings. "Don't make this worse," one officer yelled, nerves frayed as he pointed a gun towards him. But then, a deafening explosion pierced the air. The sound split through everything. The crowd, the chaos, the question hanging over them. A nearby building erupted in blinding light as bricks flew and smoke engulfed the street. "Run!" Sarah screamed, grabbing Robert and Alice's hands, urgency propelling them. They darted through the chaos, hearts pounding, as people scrambled for cover, panic tightening its grip around them. Through the thick cloud of dust, Sarah turned back to see Claire standing shock-still, her eyes wide, a look of realization washing over her face. The man fell back, and everything around them was chaos. "Claire!" Robert shouted, but it was a desperate call swallowed by the sudden roar of sirens that filled the air. Then, just beyond the wreckage, Sarah saw it, something glimmering through the smoke. A small, metallic object rolling on the ground. A badge. "Wait," she murmured, her heart sinking as she realized what that detail could mean. In all the madness, a dark truth began to dawn. Was Claire really an ally? Who was the man? Sarah's pulse hammered in her ears as she processed the implications. Just as the dust began to settle, she felt a tight grip on her shoulder. It was Robert, his expression torn between fear and resolve. "We need to figure this out, now!" But Sarah's heart raced for a different reason. Was she ready for this? Would love survive when dark secrets rose to the surface? In that moment, everything shifted. The storm of their realities was growing, thicker and heavier. As the sirens wailed, questions bubbled in her mind. What had she really gotten into? What was the truth lurking beneath the surface? And as chaos wove itself deeper into their lives, one question loomed. Were they all in danger now? Sarah's heart raced as she clung to Robert's arm, the sound of chaos buzzing around them like angry bees. She had barely processed the calamity that had just unfolded when the ground shook beneath her feet. An earthquake? No. It was something more visceral. A deep thud resonated, growing louder and nearer, a pulse of danger skimming the surface of reality. "Get Alice!" Robert shouted, urgency etched across his features. His face was a mask of panic, a sudden comprehension dawning over him. He glanced back at the chaos unfolding at the other end of the street. "We have to move." Just as they turned to flee, another explosion rippled through the air. This one sharper, closer. A fluttering gasp caught in Sarah's throat as she stumbled backward. Fear clamped around her chest, the intensity spiraling as dust and debris drifted through the darkening sky. "Look out!" Robert pushed her forward, just as a chunk of concrete crashed down where they had stood moments before. Shouts erupted, and everyone scrambled for safety, the scene dissolving into mayhem, screams piercing through the blurry fog of confusion. But amid the chaos, Sarah caught a glimpse of Claire. She stood frozen, staring at the man they had tried to save from the police. He was now on his feet, moving towards the wreckage with purpose. Something wrapped around his expression. Fear, yes, but also something darker, something almost feral. "Stop him!" Sarah yelled, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. Robert grabbed her hand, tugging her toward safety, but she couldn't look away. The man beckoned to Claire, eyes wide, desperate. "You said you would help me. You lied!" Claire's composure shattered. She shot back a look filled with shock and something that twisted Sarah's gut. Guilt? In that fleeting moment, Sarah's heart dropped. Had there been a connection between Claire and the man all along? They shared something deep. Then, in a fit of rage, the man lunged at Claire. "You betrayed me!" His words were a snarl, raw and visceral. That's when time slowed again, every moment stretching infinitely. Sarah felt the world tilt. She yanked her arm free from Robert's grasp and charged toward them. She didn't think, only felt an urgency to confront this unfolding horror. "Step away from her," Sarah yelled, her voice cracking through the clamor. The man turned to her, eyes flickering with a mix of recognition and something much darker. For a heartbeat, everything paused. Claire looked at Sarah, panic etched across her features. "No, stay back!" she shouted, warning and pleading intertwined in her tone. But then, a sudden deafening boom erupted from the sky above. A flash of light tore through the dim air, and Sarah stumbled backward from the shockwave. A helicopter descended, its blades slicing through the air with an urgency that sent everyone into a frenzy. The swirling wind scattered debris like confetti amid the chaos. "Get down!" Robert shouted, pulling Alice close. But the man looked up, eyes lighting with a manic excitement. "They're here! They've come for me!" he screamed, arms outstretched as if inviting a fate he couldn't fully comprehend. In the midst of the pandemonium, Claire's voice rose above the noise. "This can't be happening! Not now!" The crowd's murmurs turned into an uproar, whispers darting between disbelief and horror. Who was this man? What was he tangled in? Would he lead them into destruction? Sarah's breath came in quick gasps as another thought pierced through the veil of shock. Had Robert known more than he'd let on? Had Claire, in her polished world of legalities, been hiding secrets that now threatened to consume them all? "Sarah!" Robert's voice drew her back from her spiraling thoughts, but she felt a churning inside that made her hesitate, doubt creeping in like a wet chill. As the helicopter loomed closer, with armed figures dangling from ropes, Sarah's heart plummeted. Had they really just stepped into something bigger, darker than any of them had imagined? The world was shifting, shadows revealing secrets she hadn't been ready to confront. And just like that, as the air thickened with tension and uncertainty, one resounding question echoed in her mind. Was love enough to survive a storm like this? Or would the truth tear them apart? Sarah's heart raced as she clung to Robert's arm, the sound of chaos buzzing around them like angry bees. She had barely processed the calamity that had just unfolded when the ground shook beneath her feet. An earthquake? No, it was something more visceral, a deep thud resonating, growing louder and nearer, a pulse of danger skimming the surface of reality. Get Alec. His face was a mask of panic, a sudden comprehension dawning over him. He glanced back at the chaos unfolding at the other end of the street. "We have to move." Just as they turned to flee, another explosion rippled through the air, this one sharper, closer. A fluttering gasp caught in Sarah's throat as she stumbled backward. Fear clamped around her chest, the intensity spiraling as dust and debris drifted through the darkening sky. "Look out!" Robert pushed her forward, just as a chunk of concrete crashed down where they had stood moments before. Shouts erupted, and everyone scrambled for safety, the scene dissolving into mayhem, screams piercing through the blurry fog of confusion. But amid the chaos, Sarah caught a glimpse of Claire. She stood frozen, staring at the man they had tried to save from the police. He was now on his feet, moving toward the wreckage with determination. Something wrapped around his expression. Fear, yes, but also something darker, something almost... Sarah yelled, but her voice was swallowed by the chaos. Robert grabbed her hand, tugging her toward safety, but she couldn't look away. The man beckoned to Claire, eyes wide, desperate. "You said you would help me. You lied." Claire's composure shattered. She shot back a look filled with shock and something that twisted Sarah's gut. Guilt? In that fleeting moment, Sarah's heart dropped. Had there been a connection between Claire and the man all along? They shared something deep. Then, in a fit of rage, the man lunged at Claire. "You betrayed me." His words were a snarl, raw and visceral. That's when time slowed again, every moment stretching infinitely. Sarah felt the world tilt. She yanked her arm free from Robert's grasp and charged toward them. She didn't think, only felt an urgency to confront this unfolding horror. "Step away from her!" Sarah yelled, her voice cracking through the clamor. The man turned to her, eyes flickering with a mix of recognition and something much darker. For a heartbeat, everything paused. Claire looked at Sarah, panic etched across her features. "No, stay back!" she shouted. Warning and pleading intertwined in her tone. But then, a sudden deafening boom erupted from the sky above. A flash of light tore through the dim air, and Sarah stumbled backward from the shockwave. A helicopter descended, its blades slicing through the air with an urgency that sent everyone into a frenzy. The swirling wind scattered debris like confetti amid the chaos. "Get down!" Robert shouted, pulling Alice close. But the man looked up, eyes lighting with a manic excitement. "They're here! They've come for me!" he screamed, arms outstretched as if inviting a fate he couldn't fully comprehend. In the midst of the pandemonium, Claire's voice rose above the noise. "This can't be happening! Not now!" The crowd's murmurs turned into an uproar, whispers darting between disbelief and horror. Who was this man? What was he tangled in? Would he lead them into destruction? As the helicopter loomed closer, with armed figures dangling from ropes, Sarah's heart plummeted. Had they really just stepped into something bigger, darker than any of them had imagined? And then, as the dust began to settle, the man shouted something that sliced through the chaos. "You don't know who I really am." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a slip of paper, waving it high. "I'm not just a runaway. I'm an undercover agent. I have evidence that can take down half the city." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Undercover? What was he saying? Had everything turned upside down? Could this chaos be connected to something far greater? Something behind the curtain all along? As everyone froze, a ripple of shock washed over the crowd, shifting the air thick with tension. "Wait, what?" Claire's voice trembled, now stripped of the authority she held just moments ago. The ground beneath them felt unsteady, shaking not just from explosions, but from revelations. Sarah's mind raced. Could Robert know more? What secrets had Claire been hiding? The man continued to shout, "I'm in danger, and now so are you." The sirens wailed, the din swirling around them. The truth hung heavy in the air, cloaked in confusion and fear. Was love enough to survive this storm? Or had Sarah unwittingly walked into a web of lies that trembled before collapsing? Caught in the storm of revelations, she took a step back, eyes darting between Robert and Claire, dread pooling in her stomach. Who could be trusted? As the sirens blared and shadows grew longer, a chilling question lingered. Had she become part of something beyond her understanding? As the dust settled around them, Sarah felt the weight of uncertainty crushing her chest. The man's frantic cries echoed in her mind. Undercover agent? Evidence? The word danger bled into everything, swirling around like the dust that hung in the air. She stole a glance at Robert, hoping to find clarity in his eyes, but his face was taut, shadowed with confusion and concern. "Get out of here," he shouted, grabbing Alice's smaller hand and tugging her toward the evacuation route, a glimmer of safety in the chaos. But Sarah hesitated, her heart torn between fleeing and understanding. What if this was more than just another accident? Suddenly, the helicopter roared in the sky above, drowning out the crowd's murmurs. Its spotlight sliced through the fading light, illuminating everything in stark relief, including Claire, who stood precariously close to the man, their eyes locked in an intensity that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. "Claire, move!" Robert yelled, panic surging through his voice. But Claire seemed frozen, her expression a mix of fear and something deeper. "He needs my help," she shouted, but it felt like the wind carried her words away. Then in a single horrifying moment, everything shifted. The man turned abruptly, something chaotic flickering behind his eyes. He lunged forward, barreling toward them. It felt like everything slowed. The intensity in the air thickened. Then, without warning, he reached into his jacket, a flash of metal catching the light. A scream pierced the chaos. It was Alice. "Daddy!" she shrieked as she pulled away from Robert, sprinting toward the approaching man. In that instant, fear took hold of Sarah's heart. "No, Alice, stop!" she yelled, desperation clawing at her voice. Everything erupted into chaos. Robert lunged to grab her, but the man was faster. Just as his hand shot out, a blinding flash lit the scene. The world spun as a loud report blasted through the air. A gunshot. Time froze. Sarah's heart sank into her stomach. She screamed, the sound mingling with the sharp crack of gunfire. But as the smoke began to clear, she realized with horror that the man was not the one who had fallen. In an instant, Claire staggered back, a look of utter shock bubbling on her face. Her hand clutched her side, blood seeping through her fingers, flowing like a crimson river against her polished suit. "Claire!" Robert screamed, the world collapsing around his shout. Time surged back to life as he ran to her, face pale with panic. "Why?" Claire gasped, crumpling to the ground. "Why did you shoot?" The crowd erupted, screaming, scrambling back. No one knew who was in control anymore. It was too much. Sarah's breath stalled in her throat. She felt the roar of panic envelop her, a blanket of darkness creeping in. "Get back! Get back!" officers shouted, shields raised. They pushed through the throngs of people, sirens wailing, panic swirling like a storm. The man, now wide-eyed and bewildered, stared at Claire. "I didn't," he began, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to." But Sarah's focus shifted. "Wait, what? You shot her?" Her heart raced, a sickening feeling washing over her. Had it been an accident? Or was it something more sinister? The ground felt unstable beneath her. Confusion and horror wrapped around her mind like vines, squeezing tighter. What had Claire been hiding? What had sent this man spiraling toward chaos? As officers began to secure the area, the full weight of betrayal began to seep in. Robert knelt by Claire, his hands pressed against her bleeding side, desperation on his face. "Stay with me, Claire. Help is coming. But something was wrong. Something felt dark and hidden. Why were you with him? Claire croaked, a grim realization dawning in her eyes. You were never supposed to know. None of you. A cold shock ran through Sarah. What did she mean? The crowd's indignant murmurs filled the void left by Claire's fading consciousness. She knew, someone blurted. She knew all along. As the chaos expanded, the darkness unfurled further, secrets whispering from the shadows like teasing spirits. Were they all swept into a web, spun of betrayal and hidden truths? Terror throbbed in Sarah's chest, and as she looked back at Robert, she felt every thread connecting their lives begin to unravel. What secrets had he buried? And just like that, the hour grew darker, the storm raging ahead. Would they survive it? Or was this just the beginning of something far worse? The weight of Claire's revelation hung in the air like a thick fog. Sarah's heart raced, confusion mingled with fear. What had been an unexpected encounter turned into a twisted nightmare. Robert knelt beside Claire, his hands frantic on her wound, but his face was a storm of emotions. Shock, regret, anger. Stay with me, Claire. Help is coming. His voice trembled, dripping with desperation. But Claire's eyes grew distant. You don't understand, she gasped, blood pooling around her fingers, staining the pristine pavement. The crowd gasped, whispers curling through the air, a murmur of disbelief. Was she going to die here? Someone call for help, a bystander shouted, but their cries fell flat against the chaos. The man who had just a moment ago seemed lost now stood still, frozen in shock. Memories flickered through Sarah's mind about him. How desperate he looked, as if cornered by fate. Did he really have answers? Then, just as panic threatened to swallow her whole, a figure emerged from the shadows at the back of the crowd. An older man, sharp-suited and with a gaze that pierced through the chaos. It was a familiar face, one she recognized from a picture in Robert's home. "Mr. Montgomery," the man roared, stepping forward with authority. "Get back, everyone. I'll handle this." "Dad?" Robert's voice cracked, confusion washing over him as he looked back at the old man. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, parting for him, sensing the authority he exuded. The older Montgomery's eyes fixated on the man, the one who had shot Claire, his expression cooling into a predatory calm. "Let's not escalate this, Aaron," the older Montgomery said softly, almost soothingly, his voice warm yet chilling. "You've made quite the mess." Sarah's heart thrummed in her chest. Aaron? Who is this man to Robert's father? "Mess?" the younger man spat, gaze darting wildly. "You think I can walk away? They know what I have. They'll kill me if I—" "Enough!" The older Montgomery snapped, his voice sharp like glass breaking. "You're in no position to negotiate." Time halted. Sarah couldn't breathe as the pieces fell into place. What kind of web had she stumbled into? Was this all a game? The crowd murmured, unease swirling like a current. With sudden resolve, the older Montgomery reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "You know what this is?" His voice turned colder than ice. "A signal, a tracker. I made sure you would never escape." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Sarah's eyes bulged with disbelief. A tracker? What was happening here? The man, Aaron, staggered back, face pale. You set me up." He looked somewhere between terrified and enraged. "You knew I'd come for you." "Of course," the older Montgomery replied smoothly, stepping forward. It was all part of the plan. Then it hit her like a tidal wave. Robert's family wasn't just wealthy. They were entangled in something far more sinister. "Robert," Sarah gasped, turning to him. The truth smashed into her like a brick. What have you really been a part of? But just as uncertainty rippled between them, Aaron drew a breath, wild-eyed and desperate. "You don't get it. You're all in danger." At that moment, something shifted in the air, as if a spell had been cast. Sarah felt the world narrow into a singular focus. This wasn't just about Claire, or even Robert. They were pawns in a dangerous game. Just then, a low rumble echoed above. The helicopter, still circling, cast a shadow over them, and the wind picked up, swirling debris like confetti around a shattering dream. "Get down!" someone yelled, but the sound of the helicopter's blades drowned out any command. Then came the sudden shrill beeping, a countdown. The device in the older Montgomery's hand began flashing red. "No, you can't!" Aaron screamed as the realization hit him. And then it happened. An explosion rocked the scene, light blooming brighter than the sun, enveloping everyone in a blistering wave of sound and flame. In that moment of chaos, everything flipped. Time stood still, and as the dust and smoke swirled, Sarah's heart stuttered in her chest. What reality would emerge once the storm settled? Would any of them survive this deceptive game? And as shadows danced through the haze, one question screamed in her mind. Who was the real enemy? The explosion rocked the street, flames licking the air, and for a heartbeat, everything vanished in a blinding flash. Sarah covered her eyes, feeling the heat radiate against her skin. She stumbled backward, her heart racing, panic clawing at her throat. The chaos around her turned surreal, blurred by smoke and confusion. Then she heard it. A faint cry, almost lost in the tumult. "Help!" The sound pierced through the noise. As the smoke began to clear, Sarah squinted through the haze, searching for the source. "Claire!" Robert's voice cut through the chaos, raw with desperation. He was still crouched beside her, but her eyes were closed now, face pale, lips trembling. Time seemed to slow. Sarah moved toward them, her heart pounding. "Is she okay?" she asked breathlessly. But Robert didn't answer. He frantically pressed his hands against her wound, but the blood seeped through his fingers, dark and thick. "Claire, stay with me!" His voice turned frantic, but there was something else, something in his eyes. Fear? Regret? And then it hit her. The look on Robert's face wasn't just panic. It was guilt. Before she could process it, Aaron surged forward, desperation in his eyes. "What have I done?" he shouted, voice cracking, taking in Claire on the ground, his wild expression softened by something unexpected. Was it remorse? "Stay back!" Robert roared, now protective, shielding Claire like she was the very air he needed to breathe. But Aaron didn't listen. He knelt beside Claire, shaking. "I didn't mean to. I thought I could stop them from finding me." His voice shook, genuine fear etched across his features. "They're going to hurt her. Hurt all of you." "Who?" Sarah shouted, stepping closer. "Who are you talking about?" She felt a surge of anger, panic blending with frustration. What was happening? Aaron's eyes darted between Robert and Claire. "I never wanted any of this. I was just trying to get the evidence," he cried out, desperation dripping from each word. "You don't understand the danger behind this. You're all in real trouble." As the crowd around them buzzed with questions, the officers began to take control of the scene, forming a perimeter, shouts echoing through the confusion. Then everything shifted again. A voice emerged from the chaos, the older Montgomery. He walked forward, calm and collected, drawing everyone's attention like gravity. "What are you doing here, Aaron?" he said, authority lacing every syllable. "You were supposed to be gone." But then, shocking silence fell. Aaron's face twisted, suddenly fierce. "You set me up," he yelled, rage igniting his eyes. "You lied to me, and now Claire is paying the price." "Enough!" The older Montgomery waved a hand, dismissing the accusation, but Sarah's stomach dropped. The pieces began to fit. What was happening? Why did it feel like they were all part of something bigger? Then, with calculated calm, Montgomery leaned closer to Aaron. "You don't see it yet, do you? It was never just about you. It's about the data you possess." His voice lowered, conspiratorial. "You can't escape this. No one can." The crowd hung on every word, breath held, eyes wide. Then, before Sarah could react, a shrill shriek ripped through the air. "You didn't think I'd let you go that easily, did you?" A woman stepped into view from the crowd, face twisted with fury. She pointed a gun, eyes blazing as she glared at Robert. "You should have kept her close." In an instant, the tension snapped, spiraling into chaos again. "Get down!" Robert shouted, yanking Sarah and Alice to the ground just as gunfire erupted. The world erupted into panic, screams echoing off the asphalt. Sarah pressed her face against the ground, heart racing. Adrenaline surging. The woman had shot at them. And then, amidst the chaos, a chilling realization hit her like a blow. Everything was on the brink of unraveling. Everyone hiding secrets, their lives bound by twisted threads of deception. As the gunfire continued, Sarah felt her world tilt. What if Robert wasn't just the kind-hearted man she thought he was? Through the shadows, clarity emerged hard and raw. As the chaos erupted around them, relationships shattered, trust broken. One question echoed like a haunting refrain. Who was the real enemy now? The explosion roared in the background, smoke curling around them like a ghostly shroud. Sarah pressed her face to the ground, heart racing, panic bubbling in her throat. The world had turned into chaos, gunfire, screams, and the chaos of terrified people scattering in every direction. But she couldn't focus on that. She had to know if Claire was okay. "Claire, please!" Robert's voice cracked, his hands shaking as he desperately pressed against her wound. Fear twisted his face, and for a moment, everything else faded away, leaving only that stark reality, their lives on the line. Stumbling through the chaos, Sarah felt drawn back to Robert, her heart pounding. "We need to get her to a hospital," she shouted, legs trembling as adrenaline coursed through her veins. "Get back! Everyone get back!" An officer shouted, pushing the crowd away. But Sarah didn't hear him. Her world narrowed down to Claire, and then a piercing screech echoed through the chaos, making her stomach drop. The woman with the gun was advancing again, eyes wild. Suddenly, something shifted. Aaron, the man who had started it all, moved swiftly, darting toward the woman. "Stop!" he yelled. "You don't know what you're doing!" A deafening silence fell as they all froze. Tension coiling tighter than a spring. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, confusion swirling. Who was the real enemy here? Then, in a shocking instant, the woman fired a shot. No, it wasn't toward Robert or Claire. It was aimed directly at Aaron. He twisted instinctively, but it was too late. The shot rang out, a crack of thunder, echoing through the air. Sarah's heart dropped as she watched him stagger, the look of betrayal frozen on his face before he crumbled to the ground. "Why?" he gasped, blood blooming across his shirt, like a horrific flower. "You were meant to help me." The woman's expression darkened. "Help you? After you put us all in danger? You thought I'd ever trust you?" She was only a shadow now, cold and unforgiving. Everything felt unreal. Sarah held her breath, battling the rising panic. Claire's blood was still pooling, and now Aaron lay sprawled on the ground, confusion dancing in his fading gaze. This wasn't just chaos. This was a deadly game. Secrets were spinning and twisting, like threads unraveling from a frayed scarf. "The truth," Aaron spluttered, chest heaving. "You don't know the truth." And just like that, with his last breath, the sky above them darkened. Not from smoke, but from something else, something powerful. A shadow loomed over the chaos, a helicopter hovering, but this time something was dropped. It fell with a deafening thud, far too close. The ground trembled again, but it wasn't an explosion. It was something more sinister, a device or a bomb. Panic erupted once more as people scrambled to escape, but Sarah stood frozen, eyes wide. Then it happened. An overwhelming flash of light blinded her, a sensation so strong it knocked the air from her lungs. The explosion took her breath away, not just from the sound, but from the realization. The device ignited a chain reaction. Everything shattered in a heartbeat. The world spun, debris raining down as she fell to her knees, clutching her head, gasping. Trust? It was all gone, burnt up in the flames. When she finally opened her eyes, nothing was the same. The crowd was gone, scattered as if carried by the wind. The air was filled with an eerie silence, confusion and terror mingling in her chest. Where was Robert? Where was Claire? And why did the ground feel like it was shaking with secrets that danced just out of reach? The ground beneath her shifted again, but this time it didn't feel like destruction. It felt like revelation, a truth yet unrevealed, waiting just beyond the smoke and ashes. In that moment, Sarah understood. Everything she thought she knew had been a lie, layered in deception. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning, and the shadows held more dangers than she could ever have imagined. "What truth?" she whispered, her heart pounding as she stared into the abyss of uncertainty. And that question echoed, a haunting reminder of the chaos that still lay ahead. The dust began to settle, but everything felt like it was just beginning. A weight hung in the air, thick with questions. Sarah stood frozen, staring at the chaos, broken lives scattered around like glass. Robert knelt by Claire, his hands shaking. "Stay with me, Claire." His voice broke, a raw edge of fear echoing with every word. A small part of her wanted to reach out and comfort him, but the reality loomed heavy, a darkness enveloping their lives. "Get help! Someone please!" Sarah shouted, but her voice felt weak. Panic echoed around her, drenching everything in a wave of chaos. "Sarah!" Robert shouted, eyes flicking up. "I need you here!" With a jolt, she rushed over. Panic gripped her, twisting in her gut as she knelt beside them. "What can I do?" Her voice trembled, but she couldn't let herself fall apart. "Just hold her hand," he ordered, forcing his gaze back to Claire, who lay pale and still, trapped between life and something darker. The woman who had shot Aaron paced in the distance, her gun still raised. Her face was twisted with fury, shadows crossing her features. "You don't get to win!" she screamed. Suddenly, a team of officers surged forward, securing the area. "Everyone, stay back!" they yelled, their voices commanding. But the crowd was too caught up in chaos. Eyes wide, fear etched into faces, each gasp a reminder of the danger still lurking. "Let's not escalate this," the older Montgomery said, his voice cool and calm, like a hidden spring. "You're making a mistake." But the woman wasn't listening. "You knew too much. You had to be silenced." Time felt like a river swollen with rapids, every moment carrying them closer to disaster. Sarah felt it, a shiver creeping down her spine. They were all part of a twisted game, and the stakes were too high. "Claire!" Robert shook her gently. Tears streamed down his face, pooling in the cracks of desperation. "Stay with me." A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer, but it felt like time itself was flatlining. She tried to focus on Claire, desperately wishing for help. "You're going to be okay," Sarah whispered, gripping Claire's hand tightly. A flicker of hope ignited in her chest. And then it happened. A figure, one of the officers, lunged toward the woman, gun aimed. "Drop it," he yelled, voice sharp. Click. The sound echoed in the silence that followed. And then, another explosion. This one was smaller, but sharper, colliding with the reality they had built lives in. Sarah's heart pounded. She needed to move. "Robert, we have to." He shook his head, locking eyes with her. "We can't leave her. I need you to hear me." She insisted, breathing heavily. "We need to survive first." Before he could respond, the woman slipped away, caught in the chaos. It was a blur. Officers scrambled. The scene exploded, light and sound colliding, screaming cars and sirens. "Get out!" someone shouted. And in that chaos, Robert lifted Claire, cradling her in his arms. "Come on, help me." Together they moved, weaving through the wreckage like shadows escaping a storm. Sarah felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, but she wouldn't give up. Suddenly, they were outside a pocket of air. The streets stretched before them, wide and open. Hope flickered in Sarah's chest. Moments passed. They made it! Officers rushed ahead to secure Claire, and in a fleeting moment, Sarah felt a rush of relief. But the shadows whispered still. "What now?" Robert asked, his voice raw. I don't know," she breathed, fear curling around her heart. But as their eyes met, the bond felt stronger than the chaos. They might have faced the storm, but uncertainty still hung, thick and heavy. Did love really conquer all? Yet in that moment, surrounded by sirens and the fractured pieces of their lives, there was one undeniable truth. They would fight. Together. And as they stood there, gazing at what was left, the questions loomed. What truths would emerge from the ashes? What darkness still lurked ahead? But before she could ponder further, a voice called to her, urgent and fierce. "You need to subscribe now. Don't wait 1 second more. Smash that like button now to boost the algorithm and support this channel. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this crazy ending. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. You won't want to miss what happens next."